Welcome, everyone. This is episode 9 of the leadership development series that the Resist Trump campaign has been organizing for the last 2 months. It's called How to Become a Leader in the Trump Resistance. And today's episode is going to be focusing on advanced media techniques, defining opponents, and framing narratives. Um, I want to tell you a little story about why we decided to put this in the curriculum of the kind of skills that you could focus on building as you develop as an organizer, from an activist to an organizer. We encountered a very persistent counter protester in Austin in the months of April and May. And this individual is a well-known right-wing provocateur who has a page on Rumble and puts a lot of videos out and would attend the protests that we held at Tesla stores and galleries with a bullhorn, and would taunt and harass many of our protest goers. So we really struggled for actually some time, like several weeks, if not a month, on trying to understand like how do we deal with this person who's like really making people uncomfortable, saying uncomfortable things, but also exercising his First Amendment rights. So we eventually aligned around just not engaging with him so that he could take people and put him on his stream that he was live streaming, but instead messaging to all of our participants, don't engage if you can. Like if you can avoid it, please just don't engage. But we followed him around with an iPhone camera for about 45 minutes at one of the protests, and we developed a fair amount of footage that we were able to turn later into three montage videos talking about the themes that he really focused on, whether it was calling people, using racially charged rhetoric or referencing religious tones, or, accusing liberals of being radical. And so we got him on camera saying the same things again and again and again and again, right? And we produced a video, we had no budget, so we relied upon several volunteers who will be actually in on our speaker list tonight, to help us out with that. And we really just increased the cost to this individual of coming to our protests and harassing our protesters, in my opinion. And, knock on wood, that individual who we gave the name Bullhorn Bully, he has a real name that you might be able to find in the Google Classroom if you want to kind of look through the notes. That individual has not returned since we released those videos. So I consider that to be a moderate success in the media game as an organizer and as an activist. And I want to just really share with you that story because I think it's really important for aspiring organizers to be strategic and adept when it comes to using media, whether it's graphics or video or storytelling. And I'm hoping that that lesson can be conveyed through the expertise of our guest speakers tonight. So, authoritarian resistance groups, as I just maybe mentioned, can rise or fall in the stories they tell. And this episode is going to dive into how resistance leaders can shape local public perceptions and sharpen their message. In the first segment, an experienced storyteller will show you how to build narratives that resonate. Then, in a fireside chat with a graphic designer and a video editor, we'll explore how visuals, design, and video production, can transform ideas into content that cuts through the noise and mobilizes your supporters. All right. So you may be wondering, or you may not be wondering if you've been here for a while, what is the Resist Trump campaign? And the Resist Trump campaign is a campaign that was started in November 2024, soon after the election. Our vision is a future without Trump and his enablers in power. Our mission is lawful, nonviolent civil resistance of Trump and his enablers. And our values are collaboration, integrity, nonpartisanship, and professionalism. If you're interested in learning more about the campaign, how you can get involved, and just kind of understanding a little bit more about our theory of change, you can click on the orientation guide that I've just put in the chat, or you can attend one of our orientation events that happens every Sunday night at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. My name is Nevin Kamath, and I am going to be one of the moderators for tonight's webinar. I'm also the director of the Resist Trump campaign, and I want to introduce or allow Trace, my co-moderator Tracy, to say a little bit about herself.
Hello. I'm Tracy. I live in Austin and I've been working with Nev on this, I think probably since January-ish. I think it was right after the inauguration. I hunted Nevin down and said, I gotta do something. This is crazy. So I joined forces and met a lot of other people, and I've been having a lot of fun, you know, putting everybody who I want to put, in the hot seat, especially Elon.
Thanks, Tracy. Yeah, we do have fun on the Resist Trump campaign, or at least we try to, and we try to make resistance as joyous as it can be, because we know how serious things are out there for folks who aren't as privileged enough to engage in resistance the way we are, and who are being victimized every day. So we are grateful for this opportunity, and grateful that you guys are joining us tonight. It may be helpful to recite the First Amendment at a meeting like this. The First Amendment guarantees our freedom to meet, to speak, and to plan ways to express our grievances with the way the government's being run. It goes as follows: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. I imagine you might be here tonight because you might have a couple of grievances of your own, and I welcome you to have a robust conversation with your fellow breakout room mates um, when you are placed in the breakout room, and feel free to have an open discussion, because again, you're using your freedom of expression. It's an internationally guaranteed human right. It's also guaranteed by the First Amendment of the Constitution, as you can see. If you want to get a little bit more information on how lawful nonviolent civil resistance is protected by constitutional law, you can check the link in the chat that explains some of its historical development over time. All right, so where are we in this like leadership series? And again, apologies if you've seen this before, but if it's for the first time you're seeing it, it may be helpful. We are running a 14-part or a 12-part leadership series in which we've reached the ninth episode. So that's the first red block. After the first four episodes, which you can take at any time like retroactively or whatever. After the first four episodes, we encourage people to host a political get-together under the name Resist Trump. Then after the next four, we encourage people to host a lawful protest under the name Resist Trump, using our infrastructure that's available to us, like our event platform and stuff. Now we're in the most advanced module, level 3, where we're going to be covering things like advanced media techniques. Next week, we'll be talking about fundraising and on and on. And the assignment at the end of this module will be to form what's called a resist pod. And again, if you're not there yet, it's completely fine. You can do these courses at your own pace, but do know that the movement is waiting for you. And whenever you do get to it, it will be making a big difference. As far as where we are specifically, kind of zooming in a little bit more, as you know, last week we talked about taking action or leading a lawful protest. This week we're going to be talking about advanced media techniques, as I've already mentioned, and then next week we're going to have a couple of experts telling you about like how to fundraise, if that's something you want to do for your group, both from a grassroots perspective and even from a big donor perspective. All right. So our agenda for today is to cover two main segments. Storytelling will be the first one. A media creators roundtable will be the second one. After each segment, after the first segment, we'll have a Q&A where you can ask questions of our speaker. We'll then have a breakout group for you to kind of talk amongst yourselves, and exchange ideas and thoughts that way. And then we'll do a Mentimeter exercise, kind of what we've been normally doing. And then we'll have a closing and a preview of the next episode. So again, thanks for coming tonight. I'm really excited about what we're about to hear from our experts. So our first speaker tonight is Jay Mace III, who is an award-winning Black trans performance poet, author, educator, and filmmaker. As an educator, Mace has worked globally on the needs of LGBTQIA+ folks, racial justice, and moving towards reparations in spaces such as K through 12 schools, universities, faith communities, nonprofits, healthcare organizations, and restricted care facilities. His work has been featured on MSNBC, Essence Live, Everyday Feminism, Black Girl Dangerous, BuzzFeed, Blavity, The Root, The Huffington Post, TED, and more. Winner of a Lambda Literary Award for Transgender Nonfiction and a Creative Capital Award, he is co director of the forthcoming documentary, The Black Trans Prayer Book. J. Mace believes in a world rooted in community care and runs a virtual community center specifically for BIPOC folks impacted by COVID 19. Learn more about J. Mace III's work at www.jmace3, that being Roman numeral one, or excuse me, jmaceii.com, jmace3.com, and at jmace III on socials. It is my great pleasure to welcome J. Mace. Mace, it is all you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Can y'all all see and hear me okay as you're able? Let me know in the chat if you can see and hear me okay. Let me know in the chat. Let me know in the chat. Let me know in the chat. All right, all right, all right. And so, yeah, can we get to our first slide situation? Or my first slide, Nevin? Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about storytelling real quick, and then we're going to do the interview piece and the Q&A as was discussed before. And so I want to say first, why is storytelling so important? Okay, so y'all are seeing what's happening in the world right now, right? And so I want you to know and reaffirm for all of us that we know that facts alone do not drive human behavior. If they did, the world would look very differently. Our country would look very differently than what it does right now. So we know that in our bones and our guts, right? Um, Humans need an emotional connection to be compelled into doing or learning more when it comes to social movements. One very corny little framework I used to always operate from when I was coming into organizing for the first time was the head, heart, and feet model for myself. That's something I used to always use. That we have to have places in which we can intellectually, in our heads, be able to talk about issues and really get to knowing what is happening and what studies look like, what research looks like, what new narratives look like. We have to give people through the feed or through whatever movement or whatever places to actually organize and be with each other in the physical world, right? And as well as virtually all the different places. And lastly, the heart, right? So what compels us is through art, through storytelling, through spirituality, through all these different things that compels us emotionally to get involved and engage the other two pieces, right? Next, it's how you tell a story can make or break how an action or protest is perceived and received by potential solidarity partners. I'm going to be really frank, and so when I think about this one, and the even when we get back to the facts alone piece and just storytelling in general, this last election, there were a lot of stories told, right? And so one thing that I will say, as disgusting as they were, the Republican Party told a narrative, conservatives told a narrative, um, fascism told a narrative that that for many people was compelling. It wasn't something that I feel compelled by, but it was compelling to somebody, right? And I did not see enough from other people who did not believe in fascism, often stories that were actually tied to the people that were being targeted from those stories. And we saw a lot of anti-trans rhetoric. We saw lots of stories about who trans people were and lots of rhetoric. We did not see a lot from people who were anti-trans antagonism that actually protected trans people or told trans stories. Let me know if that is something that speaks to you, right? But yeah, and so seeing when we talk about how stories can make or break how an action or protest is perceived and received, the edits are really important. So I know at some point we're going to talk about where we might tell our stories, all of that, and not every place is equal, and how someone edits or spins your story can completely crush how people see you as someone who is worth listening to. Okay, let's move forward, please. And thank you. Okay, so necessary elements of an important story. So I said necessary elements of an important story because we tell stories all day. We tell stories all day, right? And so when we're thinking about stories that we want to use to for our movements, uh, we need to oftentimes think simply. So one thing I share with people is that oftentimes people think that they're going to be great storytellers just simply through osmosis. They see people, think some people are good at storytelling and others are not good at storytelling. If you see someone that you think is good at storytelling, I promise you that oftentimes they're rehearsing or scripting. Most people have to rehearse or script. There are very few speakers, very few storytellers, very few artists that I've met that are great performers or orators that just do that off the dome every single time. Most people are scripting, even when it looks natural and it looks like it's just coming out of nowhere. It's because they might be in the habit of practicing all the time, right? So making sure that we are able to do that. As far as for me, tying that to not being overcomplicated. Sometimes people overthink instead of just doing the basic thing of just make sure you're rehearsing what you're doing. Make sure you're rehearsing, okay? And also don't have too many plot points, right? So someone asked me one day, uh, to read over a story that they were trying to do for like a news item they were doing or a press release or something like that. They had 10 different story plots, right? Pare things down. So think about one beginning, middle, and end, right? At most, maybe have 3 points that you want to hit, but think simply, right? Think about what people can hold. People cannot hold your 500-page document, right? But they can hold maybe your 1 minute story. Include a call to action, right? A lot of times people like they got the attention, they got the energy, they got all this different stuff, but they didn't include a call to action. So people have no idea what to do with your story. So really, when you're telling a story that you know is important, that feels important to you, and that you know is for this movement and this moment, make sure that you're including a call to action so people know how to engage with you further, how to engage with what you're talking about further, and how to move them to what you want them to do. Ask the audience to be, the less they're actually going to act. So do not make other people have to be creative about what you want them to do. Okay? Let me know if that makes sense to y'all. Okay. Next, which kind of goes over what I was saying earlier, but be concise. Again, be concise. Don't, for example, if for whatever reason you are telling a story and you are getting interviewed somewhere or you're speaking to a group of people, you know, I think like especially with like a news item or something like that, you're gonna have to learn to tell your story in 2 minutes or less. You might have to tell your story in 2 minutes or less. So do not think that you're gonna be able to hold people's attention for 40 minutes every time you want to tell a story. So think about how you might even tell your story to like what would it look like if I have an hour to be with people? What would it look like if I have 20 minutes to be with people? What does it look like if I have like literally 2 minutes or 30 seconds to talk to people? Right. And lastly, necessary elements of an important story evokes emotion. The ways that we talk, communicate, share with each other evokes emotion. A lot of times people are not aware of what emotion they're evoking. So be intentional. For those of my folks that might be performers, my artist people, my actor people, all that, a lot of times you might be asked to script out what is the story arc or the emotion arc of a piece that you might be going over. And I would ask you the same thing when you're telling a story for real life, right? That you should be thinking critically about what kind of emotion do I want to evoke in people, again, to get them to that action. Okay. So those are just some of the small things. There's so much that goes into storytelling, but those are just some of the small things that I want to start before we kind of get into this next piece. So thank y'all for allowing me to share a little bit of that.
That was wonderful. Thanks, Jay Mace. Really appreciate you sharing your thoughts across the different areas of storytelling. Thank you.
No worries.
Uh, One thing I'm going to do right now is just switch back to the slide that shows just the title of this topic, and then I'm going to pull out some questions that I wanted to pepper Jay Mace with, and Jay Mace is going to be kind enough to share his thoughts on some of these questions. So we heard from Jay Mace, right, folks, about how to think about storytelling in a broad sense. Now we really want to bring it into the space of being an organizer and adapting storytelling to that kind of context and dynamic. And so I want to invite Jay Mays to share his wisdom about how people can use storytelling as a tool for resistance, right, and a tool for connection with their supporters, connection with general audiences, and things like that. So my first question for Jay, excuse me, for Jay Mace or Mace is this, right? A lot of new organizers may not see themselves as like storytellers. Um, what is the benefit in seeing oneself as a storyteller, and how can they begin to cultivate stories of why they're doing what they're doing?
Mhm. So to be honest with you, and I hope this is received in the way that is intended, but if you think you're not a storyteller, I would say you're lying to yourself, right? You're lying to yourself, right? If you can communicate, whether you are talking, whether you are someone who's typing, whether you're signing, whatever, you tell stories all day. You talked about when you went to the bank. You talked about your crush. You talked about, what you did at work or like what you did. So you tell stories every day. So I want people to divorce themselves from this idea that they're not storytellers. You are a storyteller, and what is being asked of you in this moment is to tell a story with intention, right? To understand the importance of this movement and moment, to say that I'm going to actually take the time to think about the stories that would help compel me to want to do something, so that I can help do that work for others, right? And so, and I think there was another part of your question that I might be missing.
Oh yeah, well, I mean the first part was like, what is the benefit? And then the second is like, how do people cultivate the stories of why they're doing what they're doing?
Yeah, and so the benefit really is to be able to move more folks. Like, uh, I think about the 300,000 folks in the U.S. that were a part of the reparations movement at the first initial start at the late 1800s to early 1900s, which that many people were mobilized before the internet, before all this stuff, basically using storytelling and talking to people by handing out pamphlets and getting people educated in that way. To understand what was the importance of reparations and like why that was needed in this moment, right? I think that when we're when we're talking to people, it's important to not just have facts and figures again, that we need people to actually feel heart centered. And so to me, it's looking at stories that that are specific. So if I'm talking to, for example, a group of teachers, right, or I'm talking to students, my story might somehow involve like how this relates to schools, right? It might involve if I'm talking to people who are I don't know, who are organizers working across different intersectional backgrounds, we might find ways that it speaks to our different communities. So I would say try to find the connection with your audience, know who you're speaking to and communicating with, and try to make sure that parts of your story speak specifically to those people. I think that's the best way to craft stories that will actually mobilize people.
Wonderful, thank you. One of the things we talked about backstage was this one question about telling stories across different mediums.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, if our organizers are going to be in different venues, like they may be having house meetings in people's living rooms, they may be on social media, they may be talking to the press sometimes, they may be talking to, who knows, a right-wing provocateur's camera. How should they think about adapting stories for these different spaces, if at all?
Mhm. So to be honest, and I want to speak to the last point, the one about the right wing provocateur. I would deeply encourage y'all to know. So as someone, I'm saying this as someone who is I've had the fortune and the misfortune of being in the right and the wrong places when it comes to media, right? In the sense that their edit is everything. So I do want you all to be discerning about where you share stories. Everybody does not need your voice, right? Or does not need your stuff, because they will misuse you, right? And so I would really greatly encourage you all to not allow yourselves to be misused. There's lots of different ways that people are seeing some of that stuff be mobilized right now. I think we're really caught up oftentimes in sound bites these days, in ways that aren't always about moving a message forward, but are about validating sometimes really dangerous rhetoric, right? So I do want people to think about and consider where they do share their stories. And so outside of that, when it comes to tailoring, there might be people in your group that might be gifted at different things. I used to have a coworker and colleague of mine where our job was to talk about queer and trans rights everywhere, right? And so my colleague would break out into a sweat anytime they had to go around any kind of religious people anywhere, right? For me, I come from a multi-faith household. I have lots of people in my family that are like pastors or ministers across the Nation of Islam, across Christian spaces. So for me, being around religious people, that's nothing. So we would split stuff up. So I would go because I felt comfortable. I could feel myself being calm and relaxed and tell the story I need to tell and move forward. And my colleague could go to the places that were good for them. So I also want y'all to think about, you do not have to, you personally do not have to speak to everyone, because if you try to speak to every single person or please every single person, you're not going to do nothing for nobody. So know who your audiences are and where you are best used.
Really wonderful advice. Thank you for that. Okay, so moving on to another kind of angle, one thing that I've reflected on is that, these groups that are going to hopefully be formed in the next coming months and years resisting the Trump administration and other authoritarians, they won't just be the sum of one person's story. They're going to oftentimes be a collection of many stories in a group. And so, like, do you have any thoughts on how a group can weave together people's stories to form like a cohesive unit through a storytelling approach? I know it's kind of conceptual, but I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, I think that's I think that to me it might also just depend on the audience and the length of time that you have to speak. If you are someplace, and there's some places that we were given permission to speak, and there's some places we just gonna make the space to speak. If it's a situation where you're given the space to speak, I would try to think about 1, 2 minutes of a story that you could do, right? You could maybe pull some things where you're doing snippets in like a sentence or two of each story, but I would try to really kind of make sure your stuff is concise. If you have a longer piece, I still would probably try to keep probably three major key stories that you tell. I think like telling 15 individual stories may be very difficult, not necessarily because it's hard for you to figure out how to write about it, but for your audience to remember it. People, like, what you want is you want people to come away with remembering how you made them feel, but also the very nuance of your story. And the more that you are able to hone in on specific stories, the better you're able to give honesty to those stories and justice to those stories. And you might switch it up. Like maybe one day you do stories A, B, and C. The next day you do D, E, and F. The next day you do X, Y, Z, right? So, so you're gonna have many, many opportunities to tell stories. Don't feel like you have to fit all stories at every single instance in which you are given permission to speak, but do really try to work on honoring them by giving attention to a few at a time so that you can give the best nuance to the story.
Got it. Very nice. Thank you so much. I've got one last question for you, Jay Mason. It's this. I think it's a very straightforward question, which is that if you could leave our aspiring organizers with just like a simple habit or a practice as it comes to storytelling, something to keep in mind, one thing, what would that be?
Rehearsing. Rehearse your stories. If their stories are important to you, if someone has trusted you with a story, so whether it's your story or a story that was entrusted to you to tell, make sure that you're rehearsing what you're going to say. Because you, especially like one of the examples when you're talking about the right wing provocateur. So usually you would know that someone's a right wing provocateur. Maybe you don't. Maybe it's just someone who isn't a provocateur at all, but maybe also doesn't really fully understand what you say, right? And so you have to be the one that pushes the story forward. And so in those instances, you don't want people to have an opportunity to trip you up. So the rehearsal allows you to stay grounded without ever swaying. So if I know in advance of coming into a place that I'm talking about astronauts, I know what I'm talking about is astronauts. I get into a place and now they're interviewing me about I don't know, flower boxes or something like that. I'm coming back to astronauts. So I might say, that's really interesting. And the way that astronauts would actually deal with this is this. Like, I'm always coming back to my story, and I can do that because I've rehearsed. I'm like, I would encourage people to do distraction exercises with each other too, because sometimes we get nervous, right? So think again, because it's important, spend time just rehearsing. Thinking about very critically in the same way you did for school, in the same way that you've done for a job. So if you would do it for capitalism, you owe it even more to the movement to do it for the movement, right? Um, so spend time rehearsing.
That's great advice. I can actually reflect a lot on the advice that you've given over my own journey as an organizer, which started really just like 9 months ago, in the rehearsing that I've done and in trying to keep my stories concise as you suggested. Um, and yeah, like thank you for the advice. It definitely resonates with me, and I feel like it's very on point with what I've experienced as well.
Glad.
So thanks again so much, Jay Mace, for coming and speaking to us. It's been lovely having you here. And I think we are now going to move to a
Question
Q&A.
now?
A
Oh,
Q&A.
okay.
I
Yeah.
think the Q&A is now the next thing that we're going to be doing. I think. Yeah,
Okay.
that's right.
I was about to excuse myself. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I was also a little bit like unsure as to what we are doing next. So folks, if you have questions for Jay Mace about storytelling, now is a great time to drop them in the chat or drop them in the Q&A. Tracy, I don't know if you have any questions. You're getting a lot of emoji reactions, which are wonderful, Jay Mace. But I'm not sure if people have questions they want to have answered at this time.
Yeah. And also I'll say that if this sparks anything for y'all, like I've worked in a lot of different places, right? So I've done everything from doing jail support stuff to like having to I've done direct actions against like various religious institutions. I've like I've done of everything from 4-year-olds to working with corporate professionals. So there's nothing y'all gonna say it's gonna trip me up. So if you have a question about, especially audience, like I've been in a lot of different situations. So um, always down for all the random questions too.
Awesome, awesome. Well, you're getting plenty of emoji reactions. I don't see any questions coming through, so I just want to thank you again, JMace. Guys, you can find JMace's work at jmace3rd.com and at jmace3rd on socials. Thank you again, JMace, and
Thanks,
hopefully
y'all.
you can stick around if you'd like, and if you got to go, we understand too.
Absolutely. Thanks, y'all, for having me, and I hope to stay in contact with y'all. And if y'all do reach out to me, definitely the website is the best way to reach me.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
All right, let's now go to, let's see, I believe this is the right one. All right. So we're going to be breaking out into breakout groups now. And we're going to pose the question to you for you to consider in your breakout groups the following. If you were asked by local media to explain who your resistance pod is resisting and why, what would you say in one or two sentences? If you were asked by local media to explain who your resistance pod is resisting and why, what would you say in one or two sentences? And why don't we just jump right into that together? I'll go ahead and go to Menti and put in my own response as well. See some responses coming through. Appreciate that. Okay, we're seeing we are resisting human rights abuses. Everything is at stake, and what's happening puts it at risk. That's tough. I feel the need to protect our Constitution. I'm resisting a dictator and the pillars of support that prop him and his enablers up. I'm here resisting the attack on our shared humanity and safety. The US has an extensive history of exploitation that we need to work against. Filming during protest. Christianity is immoral. It's time to morally level up society. And we do that through secular, ritual, communion, and ethics. Okay, so lots of different beliefs and perspectives that I appreciate that were shared in that dialogue just now. And they keep coming, and I really appreciate people sharing them. There was some comments about Trump and his regime, about ICE, and others. Thank you very much for doing that exercise. All right. We're going to move on to the Media Creators Roundtable. Just going to pick up my notes from before. So at this time, we're going to be hearing from a couple of creators who are activists and, in one case, a graphic designer and the other a video editor. First, I'll introduce Brendan McNerney, who is a freelance graphic designer with 7 years of experience. He graduated from Texas State University in 2014 with a bachelor in international relations, and for the past decade has worked in nonprofit organizations that primarily focus on social issues. In addition to graphic design, Brendan spends his free time reading, cycling, seeing live music, and engaging in local and international politics. He moved from Heidelberg, Germany to Austin, Texas with his family in 2007, where he currently lives with his longtime partner and their dog. Also, it's my pleasure to introduce Rage Panda Pajamas, or Panda, who has worked on various projects, personal and professional, from theater, live events, and internet entertainment. They have a BFA in theater design and production and an associate's degree in motion graphics. Lately, you can find her writing for the Fundamentals. Welcome both Brendan and Rage Panda Pajamas. I invite you to come on stage when you're ready. Check to see where our panelists are. Okay. There's Panda and there's Brendan. Hello.
Hello.
Hey,
How are y'all
thanks
doing?
for good yourself. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I just introduced you a little bit. Um, how is your activism going these days? Why don't we start there and we can just take the conversation where we think it's helpful.
Um, I've pulled back a little bit, personally, just for personal reasons, but I did a lot for several months. Put a lot of projects out that were just all over the place, different organizations. I was reaching out to many different organizations of like, and it ranged from like helping edit a like 5 second clip to helping with like a 30 minute whole thing and just cleaning up. It's been a wide range of work that has filled in just the limited amount of time that I have, but it's been very fulfilling.
Nice. Good to hear that, Panda. And how about you, Brendan?
Yeah, I think it's always kind of been something I've been involved in, kind of just politically engaged, but it really supercharged, I'd say, for me this past, I don't know if it's February or March or whatever, and it was just nonstop. And I mean, some of what Panda's saying is familiar, but it's I mean, art and graphic design is like been a hobby, and it's been something that kind of done for myself. And coming in, it's kind of like, I don't know if you've like seen that clip or heard that thing, like, I think it's from the newsroom where it's just, I'm mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take it anymore. That's just where I was at, and I'm like, whatever need I can fill, whatever needs to happen, wherever I can help, like it doesn't matter. Like that's where I want to be, and that's where I'm going to put myself. And so I've gone through like and helped like a lot of great organizations that are still, around, and it's been enjoyable, but it's also been very stressful. And I think that's it. It's passion kind of mixed with duty, like, and so I regret, that like I'm glad to be doing, something that I love and applying to this, but I regret the situation that's brought about it. But yeah, trying to stay in there. It's nonstop, and it's
Yeah.
learning to take breaks.
Yeah, good. I mean, you really like it's an amazing thing to be able to have time to spend with both of you guys because you guys have contributed so much. Even in the I mean, I know that there were discrete projects that you've worked on. Brendan, you've done some really great like graphic design for Resist Austin in our Tesla takedown campaign and now in our Ice Out campaign. Panda, you helped us with that that Bullhorn Bully series of videos that we released. You guys did some really, really great work for us, and yet I still hear, in your voices that there's a weariness and that I think is probably reflective of how activists are feeling across the country, which is that, we're tired and it's been a long slog, and we need to find some way to take care of ourselves so we can stay in this fight for the long run, because it may be a long fight. So thanks for being honest about that. Um, I did want to explore a few different themes in the course of our conversation, and I'm just going to set a quick timer for myself so I'm being honest with time. 1 second. So yeah, I mean, I think the main thing that I was hoping to uh, explore today with both of you guys is similar to what we talked about with Jay Mace, which is how, like organizers or aspiring organizers or activists who may or may not consider themselves to be creatively inclined, how they can partner with artists and other creatives to amplify their work or to step into the role of being a creative activist themselves. So kind of that both things, because like I'm coming at it from my perspective, and I'm like the least creative guy in the world. But there may be other organizers who are kind of different on the spectrum of like what they can bring in terms of skills. And so I want to address their interests and concerns as well too. So just in general, I'm just curious, like, what is your perspective on how creativity, whether it's in design or video or performance, why is it so essential in grassroots resistance work? And what specifically can it do that like a standard protest or a statement can't do?
Well, I think a big part of it is reaching people that aren't out there. And you gotta be like, you gotta grab the attention. We're currently in the world where social media is just everywhere, and everybody is just glued to their screens. So a big part of capturing your attention is stopping you from scrolling and interrupting that. And we're battling. Journalism is taking huge hits. As somebody who is also writing, it's so hard to capture an audience nowadays, and you need and so eye-catching graphics, something that's compelling, something that's going to get somebody to stop and look and pay attention. That attention is right now like a huge currency for media, and they want your attention. They want nothing but your attention right now. And so, like, what you put your attention towards is what you're going to get back from your media.
Nicely said. Thank you. I love the idea that something that can stop you from scrolling and kind of interrupt that dynamic, where creativity kind of plays a role in just kind of breaking through the noise. Brendan, any thoughts on that?
Might have forgot like half the question, but I'll go back. One thing, and I know it's like kind of going like into this, and it's something that always sounds very important, is tone setting and knowing your audience. When it comes to creativity, you're thinking about the people that you're talking to, and the thinking about the people that you want to energize. It's if there's people you already know that's going to come out, and like what you're going to create is appeal to them, that's great. But if there's certain people, that you're trying to reach that might not be great, that is who you like from a creative perspective, that's who you need to be gearing towards. That's who you need to be getting the attention of, because there's lots of, and I've missed the mark. There's lots of great designs, out there, and there's lots of stuff, but like that's just it. It's tone is a way to increase severity. It's a way to like, mood. So for instance, if like risk assessment, there are certain events where if you want a lot of people to come out, then you want it to look engaging. You want it to appeal to someone, like someone thinking of, you just got to think of the different audiences. Like if there's someone with kids, that, they can't go unless they get a babysitter, like proposing it in a way that where they're like, hey, I can, bring them. And this might be separate, but it is kind of, I was thinking about it like Panic from what you were saying as one thing of like getting eyeballs, and like social media and engagement, like attention is king. I don't know how much this relates, but I don't know if it's so much a frustration as a realization with, the what is it, Nicole Collier, when she was being held in the Texas Capitol, one thing I saw, it was really great, seeing the attention, people reposting, people talking about it and all that, but actually being down there at the Capitol and seeing how many people were there, it's it's the first step, but it's not enough. So there's got to be some way, and I don't know how, but the bridge there, it needs to be bridged much more of the online engagement, the online what you're doing, the sharing and getting the message out, and what's actually happening on the ground, because it's and that's not to kind of like put shade or like to minimize. People do what there is to their capacity, but I think finding a way to reach people and be like, we actually really need you down here, and we actually really need people that I don't really know how to do that, like, exactly, but I think if the messaging, and everything and like creative, that's something at least I'm working out and mulling in my mind.
Yeah, you covered a couple of different points there, like, bridging the online with what's happening on the ground, as well as like the importance of tone. When you mentioned tone, it made me think of that. I think we had a volunteer who created a graphic for the Elon's birthday party that we had at the end of June, which we wanted to be kind of like a, if not family friendly, like family forward kind of event. Where people could bring their kids if they wanted to, because we'd have a piñata and stuff, and it was a very festive graphic that we had ended up going with from the Resist Austin perspective on that one. And I think to me that's what came to mind when you spoke about like the importance of tone and how you want to invite people and like a joy, if you want to create like a joyous environment for something. It's interesting. Um, Okay, so kind of shifting gears a little bit. Now we've talked about, how kind of creativity plays a role or can play a role. Um, I'm curious about like how you believe organizers can effectively collaborate with activists in their ecosystem who happen to have, creative talents or creative skills. Um, and so like, some organizers may feel like me, like they don't really like, they really know art or whatever. And they may feel like they need to interface with others who kind of complement their skills. So what advice would you give to someone who may be in a role where they're coordinating like a pod of resistors, who wants to work with a volunteer or an activist who's creatively talented, but isn't really sure like how to do that effectively. And I'm curious, like, what are things they should keep in mind, like those organizers, as they work with talented creative activists.
Brendan, if you want to go first, this one.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I was just going to defer to you, but first, I will say up front, I will answer that, but full disclosure, I mean, graphic design and like the artist is a part of it. It's kind of holistically, so I might answer this in a more broad perspective. Like the most basic, at least from the creative aspect, and this goes with anything that you can start with, it's honestly reading up and learning from that perspective, like the independent and seeing like being open and receptive, and I will say that's been the outside of it, that's been the biggest like help. That's been the biggest I found useful to get messaging across and to connect with organizers and anything is that where they're, at least receptive, to like capacity and understanding, and listening. And then also they're able to provide the things, that I'm asking. But in the end, it's if there's any questions, it's like for me, I mean, it's you've been in theater and all that. I've been freelance and self-taught. It's having a question if I'm wondering something. Like I've gone out there, like that's just it and figured it out. So I think coming as reasonably informed. I know we've all the thing that we're all lacking is time. So I know that's hard, but it that I think goes a long way. Um, Understanding capacity and I don't know. I mean, there's honesty. I haven't had the biggest issue with that, but I might be half like forgetting the question, but again,
Basically, like,
I'm,
how can organizers work effectively with creative volunteers? That's the question.
uh, I mean, answering, giving, I think that's it. It's, I guess, the principles of design, the principles of how to engage an audience, that like what you're after and what you need. It's figuring it really feels like, I know this feels like a non-answer, but it's realizing what the questions the designer and the creator is going to be asking themselves and trying to figure out, like, and tease out from, what you might, and if you're like being already prepared. But in the end, it'll get bridged one way or another, because the work that I've put myself in graphic design or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's want to be as effective as possible. So I see it to varying degrees. It's not saying that's non-existent, but I think that's to be the answer. I'll put it to you.
I have a lot of thoughts on this. So one of my main things is that when you're going to approach somebody, um, the biggest thing that I would say is don't come to me if you don't already have a vision or a main idea. Because if you're coming to me and you're like, I want to make a video, and it's like, cool, but what? I mean, where? How? What? Have a lot of those answers to begin with. Who are you trying to target? What are you trying to say? And if, especially because a lot of these videos that I have gotten have a lot of information and wants to like help people digest information. If I don't understand the information, I can't edit it. I can't help you. And I have, as much as I would love to have a law degree, I don't. So like a lot of this stuff that like you can't just throw like a big law document at me and be like, yeah, we just need to find all of this. And it's like, I can't help you with that. I am, and then also break it into parts. So like you might think that, oh, I can just have all of this stuff and then I hand it to an editor and they'll just put it all together for me. If you can find multiple people to work together so that it's broken down into pieces, you won't have people like burning out really quickly, because again, we all have lives, we all have other things going on, and as much as whatever's going on out there and it's on fire, we do have to still clock in 9 to 5, and it is a really crazy dystopian experience, but that is where we're at. And so like just being cognizant of like, well, how can I break this down and make it to where like maybe I have a couple of people work on a script. Maybe I have somebody who works on a voiceover. Maybe I have another person who puts everything together. Um, and I do want to answer the question about AI. Don't do it. Honestly, I have a very hard stance on against AI. I think that it not only is it just so damaging for the environment, and it's also damaging for your message. There are so many people on both sides of the aisle who do not like AI, who feel the pressure of it starting to take jobs away. I know from my job, it's starting to affect my job. From my husband's job, it's starting to affect his job, and it's people on both sides. It's actually a very common issue for a lot of people, and so it's going to hurt your message if you see a bunch of AI images on social media. People are going to dismiss you immediately, and they're not even going to want to look at anything that you're doing. So yeah, and AI loses a personal voice, a personal touch. It feels dystopian. It feels robotic, and it's like, I don't want that messaging. The White House is doing it already. We don't need to follow that lead.
Thank you for that. That's really interesting. And you shared a number of nuggets in that I just want to, reflect on, right? Like breaking up to address the comment about AI, I think that it's at least from the perspective of like an organizer, it's a real like it's an ethically gray area. And people seem to fall on both sides of the fence on this one. It sounds like you know where you stand. I'm still trying to figure out where I stand because it does open up new avenues for organizing, but I know that I may not be the only one who feels the way that I feel, or may not be, reflective of the broader majority. So I appreciate that. I think that AI is going to be something that this movement is going to be grappling with for a long time, and throughout its work. And so I appreciate that perspective. As far as like breaking up a task into parts, it helps me like kind of reflect on the work that we did together, Panda. If I may share just a little bit with the audience, if you're okay with that. You know,
Yeah.
we worked on those videos about Bullhorn Bully, and like I think there were a total of either 4 or 5 people who contributed to that. And I want to kind of share a little bit about how that worked. So I was the individual taking most of the kind of video camera footage, but then we had a great volunteer step up. Oops, sorry, 1 second. Step up and timestamp all of the spoken words so that we could figure out, okay, well, what was being said at what times, and that took a lot of effort, you know. And then we went from there to theming. That was another step, like kind of theming the different pieces of the script, and kind of pulling out, okay, well, this is theme number one, this is theme number two, this can go in video one, this can go in video two. And then we had a step where we used AI, where where I created the script using AI. You didn't have anything to do with that, and I don't think you approved. But but that is what happened. And then we had a great volunteer who did a voiceover, which was amazing. And then you were there to kind of put everything together. So the way I approached it as an organizer was really kind of like as a producer, you know, like trying to like coordinate the different pieces of the task rather than just saying, "Hey, Panda, just make this for me," or whatever. I can't
Yeah.
do it, just make it for me. It's more like, okay, this is as if we're like still doing something in person. It just happens to be a creative project that's going to have different pieces. And you were able to really kind of synthesize it at the end. But I think that you did definitely kind of communicate and seem to appreciate the fact that it was broken up into those pieces, which I think you reflected now. So thanks for that reflection. I want to actually go back to Brendan. And Brendan, you know, in your work, you have like a form that you invite people who want to work with you as a graphic designer to use. Do you want to comment a little bit about like why you created that and how that is working for your activism?
Yeah. Um, I do quickly, and I apologize, just want to plug, I highly suggest anyone who is not aware of the environmental damage of AI to go and look at multiple sources. But not to divert further, the form. So one other thing, other than honestly graphic design, I love is process improvement. I love making things work. I love making things efficient. And that form, like, making a form or anything that could submit from a creator's perspective, Panda, this might sound familiar, but like getting requests either, for a video or an image, where someone's like it's telling you everything that, excellent ideas, like, dumping all the knowledge and wants to look like this, oh, this could be laid out. And at the time, it's hitting it. But on the creator side, after you've talked, we'd be going home, sit down, and we're actually in the software, we're looking at it, and it's kind of like, what was the name, like, what was the name of that again? What image was it? So, being able, it always kind of comes off as rude, I feel like, like, when I've brought up this form, and the form essentially, I guess, to better explain it, is submissions for any, like, commissions or freelance. I have people kind of, say what formats so as a graphic designer, making images, what formats they want something in, if they want it 4x5 social, the 19 by, what is it, 6 or something for the story mode for that, or letter size if they want a printer that, something that can print off, and then able to upload assets and then explain. Like, it's not the most perfect thing, but all of the information, that they're spitting at, that I can sit there, and I can look at it and think about it rather than try to guess, what it was they're saying or they wanted. And then it also has something to follow up on. It essentially creates, because it wouldn't be reasonable for, like, me to say, whoever's creating it, it'd be like, hey, okay, I need you here while, like, I'm doing this and putting it together. But just as, like, with you and others have gone back on email and like like certain messages where I'll have the information, but just like want to like, make quick corrections rather than starting all the way from the beginning and be like, I don't even remember what time you said this was. I don't remember. So one thing it does is it retains, information really well. So it makes it easier from the creator side to produce what is closest to like, what is in, the mind of, the request. Because if I have to start guessing, it's going to look what I think it is. But having it in writing and having it as reference, like I'm able to, it makes it so that it reflects the actual question. And then outside of that, I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's having it all there. Then I know it's missing. I know not what I'm trying to remember, but what I didn't get in the first place. And so it's my goal is to produce the best product. Not the best product, but the product that's being requested and is the best for whatever the action or whatever is being promoted that I can.
Got it. So it's
I'd actually like to piggyback a little bit because you made me think of don't be afraid, like, because we talked about a little bit, like getting involved in being creative as well for yourself. Don't be afraid to send, like, if you have an idea for a video and you have a very specific vision, draw it out. I know that not everybody's gonna have the artistic abilities, but literally just like I have seen tattoo artists take stick figure drawings and make beautiful artwork out of that from their clients. That information is so vital for anybody who is in any kind of graphic design, because it's like I have a very specific idea and I don't. It's like words may not be able to describe it, but a very quick little sketch might.
nice. Thank you for that. Yeah. All right. Well, shifting just one more time, I think this is probably the last question I'm able to ask with the time that we have. We've talked so far about how organizers can work with activists who have creative skills, but what about if like an organizer is in an area where there isn't a density of creative activists, right? Like, or people who have those creative skills or are professionals in some way or freelancing in the creative arts. Do you have any like suggestions for each of your areas of expertise, whether it's video production or graphic design, on like tools or even like approaches that people can use to essentially be the graphic designer or be the video editor, even if they're coming at it for the first time?
So my background, so I started learning how to use Photoshop when I was 13. I sat down, I downloaded Photoshop, probably illegally, and I learned it just by myself. Nobody taught me, nobody held my hand with it or anything. I just messed around. Now, that was, early 2000s. I won't say exactly when. But the resources we have now to be self-taught are insane compared to then. We have YouTube people that are just handing out free candy of how to do things, and there are templates that you can buy that are really not that expensive on all kinds of like motion graphics websites that are just templates, and all you got to do is just plug them in, and most of them come with tutorials on how to just plug them in, and they're already pre-made motion graphics. So if you want like some flashy graphics or flashy movement or whatever, a lot of these things are pre-made. They're not super expensive either. The tricky part is the licensing, so I would be very careful about licensing and really read into that, really comb through all of that. But there are a lot of free assets out there. There's Pexels, which is free images that you can just pull from. There are a lot of National Geographic videos are actually now open source. There's a lot of open source videos out there that you can use to emphasize when you don't have a lot of video footage yourself. And there's a lot of free programs. GIMP is a free program. There is Blender, which is a free program. And again, there's so many tutorials out there that you could just go for it and learn how to do it yourself. And even digital media is not the only thing. You can learn how to embroider, you can learn how to sew. There are so many different ways to be an activist that isn't just online.
Awesome, Panda. Thank you. Brendan, any final thoughts on that?
I'll circle back, but to the last point that you were just saying of like, you know, not online, of that banner that I think it was it Stephanie created like
Hmm.
at the end of last week that they unfurled in the middle of like, you know, the rotunda. They hand painted that. It was phenomenal. To put Texans first. And so there's so many different ways to express creativity. Like, I mean, the perfect I think you really opened with the perfect speaker like storytelling is, you know, a creative process. There's so many ways to flex it. Onto what I'm gonna echo two things Panda says. I'm going to say something that's against probably what, you know, my ethics. But yes, there's a lot of free resources out there that are good to leverage. Commercial licensing is a really important thing to keep in mind. If you're using work, especially that other people have made and put, you know, effort into that they're proud of, you want to credit them. And then on the flip side of that, if you want to self-teach, coming from me and seeing how far we've delved into fascism and how much is on the stake, and I don't care if Adobe gets pirated. I don't care if people have inflated stock. You know, you get their programs to learn. It doesn't mean that you could sell it, but you know what? It's if me to get creative and get in it, this is bad advice, I will say. So don't take it. You know, everything I make is with, you know, affinity, like stuff I've purchased, but practicing. They have enough. Find out who's part of the problem. And yeah, don't listen to that. That's my
Sounds
bad
like there's a
advice.
lot of free resources and a lot of resources that may be easy to find for folks who are looking to get into the game themselves. Awesome. We have actually like blown past like all barriers when it comes to timing. We should probably have ended this like 20 minutes ago, so I don't even know where the time went. It's been a lovely conversation with both of you, and I just want to thank you both for coming out tonight to speak to our audience. Very, very grateful for that. I think that we're going to have to skip our breakout rooms now, folks, and so I apologize for that. We're probably going to skip the Mentimeter. I'm going to go back to the shared screen and invite Tracy to come back on stage, and maybe we can close out the webinar together. So again, thank you, Panda, Rage Panda Pajamas, and Brendan. You guys are amazing, and really, really appreciate your expertise that you shared with us tonight. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. As far as the next episode, Tracy, I don't know what happened to the time, but here we are. It's like already 8:30. So I think we just gotta roll with it. I'm gonna go ahead and open up the chat. So in case people want to make any announcements or chat with each other or just say hello, you now have the ability to do so. You can chat with everyone. As far as coming up, folks, we have a few things coming up. So, in the next episode, we're going to be talking about fundraising. We're going to be having two experts, one expert on grassroots fundraising and another one on kind of like the philosophy or the spirit of essentially asking people if they would like to give, which can be, a strange thing for many people and can be particularly useful for wealthy donors. So we've got both the grassroots and the kind of the big donor side covered in next week's webinar. If you're interested in joining the Google Classroom, where you can get a little bit deeper on some of the learning, I just put a link to that in the chat. We also have Leadership Lab, where we go through and refine and improve the course on Tuesday nights. You're welcome to drop in on that. We've had people drop in, and we often give you the chance to be a breakout room facilitator if you drop in. Please join our Discord, where we have lots of conversations going on about resistance. Yeah. And finally, just want to share our last social media stuff. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Blue Sky, Meetup, and like I said, Discord. I also wanted to say that you may want to check out Resist Austin's social media because we have used quite a bit of creative talents from our ecosystem, and we've been very lucky to do so. And you may be able to get some ideas from that as well. So I'm going to end things now, Tracy, if that's all right. I'm just going to thank again our panelists and our speakers today. Thank you, Jay Mace, for coming out tonight. Thank you, Panda. Thank you, Brendan. You guys have been lovely and really appreciate it. Thanks, Tracy, for being my co-moderator. Thank you, Carolyn, for being a breakout room facilitator. And finally, thank you all in the audience for everything that you've done to make it this far, to come to the course tonight, whether it's your first course or whether it's your 9th webinar with us. We are really grateful that you're taking the time to learn this. Maybe you're going to start a pod yourself one day, or maybe you'll just share this information with someone who can or who will. But regardless, your contributions are valued and important and essential in this movement of our lives. So thank you for coming out tonight. Have a great night.